Now let's have a look at how we can embed our processed tissue into a solid block of paraffin wax, getting ready for microtomy. To do this, we need to use a piece of specialized equipment called an embedding center. Before we can start to use the machine, we need to perform some pre-use checks to make sure it is fit for purpose and ready to use. First, we need to check that the actual temperature of all the heated areas of the machine are between 56 and 62 degrees. If you recall, the working temperature range for our molten paraffin wax is between 56 and 62 degrees. Next, we need to check that there is enough wax for continuing embedding. If we run out of wax during the middle of our embedding, samples can be delayed for hours, causing delays in results. Now we should just make sure that our samples are in the sample holding tank. And finally, we need to check in the heated mold storage area. We need to make sure that we have enough of each size block mold to cater for all of the different sizes and shapes of our tissues. Make sure you keep the lid shut so that the molds stay warm at all times. Now let's have a look at the embedding technique. Try to follow the procedure as you watch the video. First, you need to remove a cassette from the tissue holding tank and put it on the hot working surface. Make sure that when you put it on the working surface that you keep it flat at all times. Some of the areas are warm and some of the areas are hot. Ensure that the sample is placed on a hot area. You'll know this because it will not stick to the work surface. If it is too cold, it will stick to the work surface. Carefully remove the lid of the cassette and discard the lid into the bin. Now select an appropriate size stainless steel mold from the heated mold storage area. There needs to be about a minimum of 2 mm and a maximum of 1 cm of space around the tissue when it's placed in the mold. Place the mold on the hot spot in front of the wax dispensing switch under the dispenser. Dispense a small amount of wax into the base of the mold. Make sure you always keep the mold and the cassette flat on the hot surfaces. Again, change your forceps. Always change your forceps before you actually touch the tissue. Using your new warm forceps, remove the tissue from the cassette and place it into the mold. Holding the mold in the air over the cold spot, move the tissue into position. It should be centered with the longest straight side of the tissue parallel to one side of the mold. Gently but firmly pressing down, lower the mold onto the cold spot. Watch carefully until you can see a slight whitening around the tissue. Here's an example of a different tissue being used just to give you a closer look. Look at the slight whitening on the base of the mold. We're just setting the base layer of the wax slightly to stick the tissue down and make sure that it is flat on the base of the mold. Once the tissue is stuck down, lift the mold from the cold plate before the wax sets too hard. Next, you need to place the cassette base on top of the mold. Make sure you press it down to ensure that it is nice and flat. Holding the mold and the cassette above the hot spot, dispense the wax until it slightly overflows. Make sure that you do put enough wax into the mold. If it is underfilled, it will cause problems during microtomy. Leave the moulds on the cold plate for 20 minutes to solidify.